I think what's difficult to take is that all of this is happening on our watch right now in our world. Truth is, though, we can do something to end this kind of exploitation of little girls. And one of the things that Cheryl and Nicholas recommend in their book to stop this is, in fact, to sponsor a child. Here's why. Every time we sponsor a child, that connects them to a responsible adult that decreases the chance for abuse. And for years, the Willow Creek Association has had a strategic alliance with Compassion because they address this justice issue none of us can ignore. And because Compassion chooses to do all their ministry to children through a local church, they don't just put a responsible adult around that child. They put an entire church around that child and their family. This deep connection to a church is what no other major child sponsorship program provides. Compassion ensures you that a church will walk with each of these children through their 18th birthday. In raising a family in the well-resourced suburb of South Barrington here outside of Chicago, my wife Leanne and I were deeply concerned that our 3 kids would grow up completely disconnected with the kind of hardship so many in our world live with every day. And so we asked each of them to sponsor a child through Compassion and become friends with someone similar to them, but who happened to be born in very different circumstances. Our youngest daughter, Elisabeth, saw firsthand the impact of a caring church when disaster struck her sponsored child's family. Take a look at this following video that tells their story.
Our story begins with actually my dad. He came to us 3 kids, me and my older sister and my younger brother, and he said, we're going to start sponsoring a child through Compassion. We all decided to choose a kid, and I chose Elisabeth because she has the same exact name as me, and that's where our story began.
Mi nombre es Elisabeth.
My name is Elisabeth. I am 10 years old, and this is my story. I live here in São Paulo, Guatemala with my father and younger brother and 2 sisters. 6 years ago, I was sponsored by a girl in America through Compassion, and she and I have the same name, Elisabeth.
Mi papá está pescando.
2 years ago, my father had a bad fall while working and hurt his back very badly. He couldn't move or walk, and still can hardly work to earn money for us. Just 2 months later, my mother then became really sick with a fever. She was in a lot of pain, and she told my father to look after us and that he should always speak to us about God. The next day, my mother died. I miss her very much. Now I have to take care of my family.
I remember sophomore year, I had received a letter that the mother had died, and we don't know why. And now Elisabeth is the caretaker of her family. And I just kind of wanted to just cry, this family didn't need this right now. The dad's already sick and in bed. I just remember feeling devastated. This is kind of what poverty is like. It's not like you choose to live like this.
My life changed. I didn't have to do all the housework before. Now I have to do all of it. I have to look after my younger brother and sisters. I sweep the floor, I make the beds, I do the dishes and the laundry, and I cook. Most times we have barely enough food for all of us. It's very difficult for me.
This is a real story, and this is a real journey. I get to take part in her life and helping her get back on her feet. And I was just so grateful at that time for Compassion. You know, if Compassion wasn't there, I don't even know what would happen to her or her family.
I love going to the Compassion Project at the church nearby. They help me in lots of ways.
Unos coros.
The first thing we do is we pray, and we sing, and we learn a lot about Jesus. And they help me with my school and take care of me when I am sick or injured. And they give us food, which is delicious. My life has also changed a lot because nobody wrote to me before, and now I get letters from my sponsor, Elisabeth. And I send her letters also. I ask her to pray for me a lot. I also want to tell her that I want to be just like her because she has helped me so much through the Compassion Project.
For Elisabeth, it's the difference between healthcare and no healthcare, or school, or tutoring, or somebody just to listen to her and know her story and talk to her about it, helping her kind of climb out of her situation that she's been born in, and breaking that cycle of poverty. For her, it can change the story.
It's difficult to imagine how a family survives a tragedy like that. Makes you wonder how many blows a family like that can take. When we visited them, it was just after the father's accident and before the mom died. The father was immobilized in bed with atrophied, frozen hands and a deadpan look in his eyes. And I look at that video now, I can't believe that he's walking, or that Elisabeth is smiling the way she is in that video. She wasn't that way when we saw her. And they're hanging in there because the church came around them. People from the church would pick up the father and they would take him to rehab each week until he got back on his feet. And presently, Compassion connects about 1.2 million children to the church in 26 of the most impoverished regions of the world. They've been doing this for about 60 years with an impeccable reputation for integrity and accountability. And so in preparing for the summit, we asked Compassion to identify as many children, some 7,000, mostly little girls, that are living in extreme poverty and vulnerable to being stolen into sex trafficking and other human rights violations. And I want to challenge each of you to think seriously about becoming a sponsor for just $38 a month and change the story of a child just like Busy. Stop by the Compassion booth at each site. Take a look at the pictures of children waiting to be sponsored. Our summit community alone could change the story of 7,000 children all around the world. We can do this, changing one life at a time, one family at a time, one church at a time. And for those of you who are church leaders, we have everything you need with some free resources that you could go to compassion.org/GLS. All the resources are there so you can engage your entire congregation. You should have received a little flyer when you came in today. This will give you a lot of information about where you can get connected to those resources. Here at Willow, we dedicate about 3 or 4 weeks every year to mobilizing our congregation to be engaged, educated, to extend justice and compassion around our world. We're a completely different church because of it. And just imagine if the whole community, the whole summit community of churches, more than 6,000, got behind something like this. It would create an unprecedented wave of sponsored children through the church all around the world. It'd change the whole destiny of countries, I think. And my hope is that by the end of the summit, there wouldn't be one child left uncared for at all of our sites. Please, don't walk by the Compassion booth without doing something. Make a difference. Take that next step as an individual and a church. And then let's just see what God does through us together that none of us could do alone.
3:30.